Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to unpack the real origin story of the Indian National Congress. And what if I told you that the common story you've heard, the one where it was basically a British idea to manage dissent, is fundamentally wrong?
So was the birth of the Congress just some historical accident? Or worse, was it a clever British trick, a safety valve just designed to let off steam? Or was it something much more deliberate, an absolutely unavoidable step in a nation's journey? That's the real question we're digging into here.
Okay, so let's get right into this. The first thing you've got to do is forget that myth of the safety valve, this idea that some British official created the Congress just to contain Indian anger. The truth is, the foundation of the Congress was really the culmination of decades of Indian political work, driven by Indians for Indians.
To really get this, we have to understand that the Congress didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It was more like the final deliberate placement of a capstone on a foundation that had been laid brick by brick for decades. In fact, you could say the Congress was the totally natural result of a political awakening that had started way back in the 1860s and 70s. For the Indian leaders of 1885, this was no surprise. It was the realization of a dream they'd been working toward for a long, long time.
But, before a national body could form, that energy had to come from somewhere. And in the years leading up to 1885, that energy was kind of like sparks catching fire all across the country, each one burning brightly, but on its own.
And what's really fascinating here is you see this changing of the guard. The older political groups, they were seen as too narrow, maybe a little too cozy with the elites. So a new, younger, and much more radical generation of nationalists started taking the lead, and they were ready to push for some real change. And you can just see the momentum building right here. In 1876, you've got the Indian Association in Bengal. Then, boom, 1884, the Madras Mahajan Sabha. And then in 1885, the very same year the Congress was formed, you get the Bombay Presidency Association. It was a wave of new organizations all over India. Now, when you look at their demands, they might seem pretty reasonable on the surface, but think about it. For a colonial power, these were deeply subversive ideas. The right to bear arms, a free press, Indians getting positions of power. Every single one of these chipped away at the very foundation of British control. But just making demands wasn't going to be enough. These scattered groups were about to learn a very harsh, but also a very, very important political lesson. And that lesson came through failure. For a solid 10 years, from 1875 to 1885, nationalists organized these major campaigns. They fought against the Vernacular Press Act, which was designed to shut down Indian newspapers, and they pushed hard for the Ilbert Bill, which would have let Indian judges try cases with Europeans. But all of these efforts had the same critical weakness. And this right here illustrates the problem perfectly. When Indians agitated for the Ilbert Bill, their efforts were regional, uncoordinated, not really working together. But the European community? In response, they organized a powerful, united, all-India opposition, and they won. The bill was defeated. So here's the crucial takeaway. The nationalists learned that to fight a united opponent, you have to be a united opponent. These isolated protests were just doomed to fail. A single all-India political organization wasn't just a nice idea anymore. It had become an absolute necessity. So that realization, which was really born from defeat, became the catalyst. It directly led them to create the very organization they now knew they couldn't live without. And that brings us to 1885. On December 28th in Bombay, all the struggle, all the hard-learned lessons, and all those scattered efforts from the past decade finally came together. The Indian National Congress was born. But it was so much more than just a meeting, The founders saw it as the central nervous system for the entire nationalist movement. It was going to be the platform for debate, the organizer for action, the headquarters for strategy, and the ultimate symbol of a new, unified national spirit. So, okay, the Congress is formed, but what was its actual mission? What was the blueprint for this new national movement they were trying to build? Well, the early leaders laid out three really clear objectives. First, and this was the big one, unite the incredibly diverse peoples of India into a single nation. Second, create a common political program that everyone could rally behind. And third, mobilize the public to turn politics from some hobby for the elite into the business of every single person. And this focus on unity, it comes straight from the top. When the very first Congress president, W.C. Banerjee, was asked what the main goal of the organization was, his answer was so simple and clear: growth of national feeling and unity of Indians. That was job number one. And this wasn't just talk either. They put this goal of unity into practice right away. They literally wove inclusivity into the fabric of the organization. The sessions would rotate all around the country. The president was always chosen from a different region than the host city. And crucially, they created rules to protect religious minorities, making sure that no resolution would pass if a majority of either Hindu or Muslim delegates were against it. You know, this quote, it captures the entire philosophy of these early leaders. They understood that India wasn't a fully formed nation in the modern sense. Not yet. The British loved to claim it was just a geographical expression. The founders of the Congress kind of agreed, but they added a really powerful twist. It was a nation in the making, and it was their job to build it. So the real story of the early Congress leaves us with this incredible idea. A nation isn't something you just find, it's something you build. It's a conscious act of creating a shared identity, a shared purpose. And that raises a question for all of us, even today, right? When you set out to build a nation from all these diverse peoples, what is that first most essential brick that you have to lay?